Well, good morning, Dam Fam. Today is Friday, July 3rd, 2026. And here at the Beaver Lodge, we're going to talk about the big news that happened yesterday. The government of Alberta and the government of Canada had their big announcement on the pipeline implementation agreement and what the next steps were going to be because Alberta had a deadline of July 1st to submit its proposal to the Major Projects Office for it to decide whether or not it would be designated as a project of national importance. So we'll take a look at the announcement. There's been a lot of news, and there's a lot of people who are happy, and there's a lot of disappointment because what we have now is very far from that which was originally promised. So grab your favorite bevy because this one might be a little juicy. And here we go.
Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 6 and episode number 940 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada. Always 100% Canadian, and of course, always beaverific. Today, recording day is Friday, July 3rd, 2026. And as you can tell by the sunlight on my face, it's a beautiful day here at the Beaver Lodge. Although it is going to be another scorcher from what we can tell with the temperatures that feel close to in the 40s, if not in them today, would be the third day in a row of this type of very intense weather. If you are somewhere in central Canada, you're probably feeling it with, again, some more risk of thunderstorms late this afternoon. We're getting a lot of them lately. Interesting weather, I tell you. But hey, we try to make the most of it here. But I am looking at the weather report here, and around 4 p.m., 27 degrees Celsius feels like 38. That's a lot. It already feels like 32, and it's like not even 8 a.m. yet. So, so it's going to be another hot one over here. Big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Kids and Cubs, how is your mental health doing today? Personally, I am doing very well. Did not get as much sleep last night as I did the night before, but that would have been hard to do considering I threw my clock a little bit off, especially with the extra nap I had yesterday. But still feeling relatively refreshed. and hope to get back to the hour that I had set 2 nights ago to get back to sleep, but without needing a nap somewhere during the day, so that all my sleep hours are back to regular time. But I'm slowly getting there. I've been working very hard on trying to get there, and I'm making some progress. I'm making some progress. I'm proud of myself. On other fronts, mentally, rather concerned after the announcement yesterday. I will say, not preoccupying me so much that it's like ruining my day or anything, but I'm not as happy as I could be. Let's put it that way, with the decisions that were made yesterday. And I think that's going to be the case for a lot of people, I believe. Yes, what a soccer game in Toronto yesterday. The match between Portugal and Croatia, I believe it was. Um, Lady Laura is going to be a little disappointed because I know in that matchup she was pulling for Team Croatia, but it seems it was a match that had a lot going on. I read something about 4 disallowed goals or something of the sort. I'm not sure if that was indeed the case, but I read something about that this morning, but not in a news article, so I don't know if it's a reliable source. But yeah, uh, Portugal beat Croatia 2-1. Soccer legend Ronaldo and Croatia's Luka Modric went head to head in the game. And let's see. Yeah, and it seems like it's the last game in Toronto of this current World Cup. Toronto hosted 6 games in the tournament, and that's going to be it for now. I don't know if that's it for all the matches in Canada specifically, whether or not there'll be a couple more. But yeah, definitely an exciting match there. And of course, we're getting ready for our own very exciting match on Saturday, I believe it is. Yes, tomorrow, the 4th, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Canada takes on Morocco. And we're hoping for a little soccer magic that will shine down on us so that we can snag a victory there. Like I said, we saw Paraguay do it to Germany, so it is possible. Well, we got to believe. We got to believe. And that will be, Linda says here, Croatia got a last minute goal to tie the game, but it was disallowed for offsides. Ah, indeed. Yes. I'm still trying to understand the offside rule here. And Nona Carol says Portugal had one disallowed as well. So a couple of offside, I guess, goals throughout the evening. So yeah. Oh well. I'm saying oh well in that, like I said, my Beaver sweetie has tried to explain the offside rule to me many times, and I kind of get it in theory, but I just never actually see it when it's on the field. Whereas in hockey, I know when an offside happens pretty much instantly, but in soccer, I still happen to. Um, the visual to brain cue doesn't happen fast enough for me to say, "Oh, that was offside." So, but yeah, Kit Linda says, "Go Canada, but manage your expectations." Of course, we have to manage our expectations. So it's just it's fun to dream big. It's just fun to dream. It's fun to dream big. What can I say? All right, which actually ties in to what we're going to be talking about today because we're all dreaming big for Canada's future, and the Prime Minister appears to have put a lot of personal investment in the concept of making Canada an energy superpower. Some could say that we are already in certain aspects. There are many pieces on the global chessboard that have shifted recently with the President of the United States. Very ill fated and probably ill advised excursion into Iran and all that has happened as a result, all the stress to global trade that has occurred as a result, and a lot of people and nations and people with various interests seeing how the United States has seemingly caved on pretty much all of its opening demands with regard to Iran, and how Iran is now aware that it has great control, probably greater control, to influence the world by influencing the economy via the Strait of Hormuz than it ever could with any nuclear weapon, which it is important to say that both the IEA, the International Energy Agency, and the Intel whole section of the US government kept on reminding everyone in the reports that it did not seem like Iran was seeking and hasn't been seeking for a while. However, of course, a concern is when you are enriching uranium, it takes a whole lot more time to enrich uranium from 0 to 60%, where Iran was, than from 60 to about 90%, which is what you need for a really good quality nuclear weapon. So that was a concern, allegedly, in what was going on. However, with this failed experiment on the part of the United States and what the world is learning about how the world can now operate in the future, with Iran having the power that it has, and with the United States never having been weaker, really, on the international stage, and the United States having sent a signal to anybody with whom it is negotiating right now, and our friends in Mexico, that all they really have to do is find a way to absorb the pain long enough that more pain accumulates on the Trump administration than does on us. Now, that can take a while, but this has, if we're considering it a war, has become a bit of a war of attrition. And it's about more, it's about who can take more pain than who can deliver the most, pretty much at this time. But Donald Trump is not the world's most patient man, number one. He does have a couple of very serious deadlines coming up. And as you know, like I said, with the situation in Iran, we've just seen a situation where he was in a lot of trouble and had some very important deadlines coming up. For example, the amount of time the rest of the world could function with about 1 billion barrels of oil fewer per day. Was it 1 billion or 1 million? Or 100 million? I can't remember now. But yeah, I think it was maybe 1 billion barrels of oil, less out of circulation throughout the entire time that this has gone on, and still function. And it seems that that date was getting very close, was within about 4 weeks from about the time that Donald Trump suggested that he had solved for the 30th or 39th time this war that he created. And we're still not really quite there yet, it would seem. In the case of our negotiations with the United States, Trump does have some critical dates coming in terms of midterms, for example, where depending on whether or not he wants to be, how much of a lame duck he wants to be, he might try to pull all the stops, or said might just need to accept whatever deal he can get at that time and then somehow spin it for himself as a win, like he is trying to do here with Iran. So, given that we've just witnessed this, we're not in any particular hurry, right, to sign something. If we've got him where we want him, that is going to be more of that case as we get closer to that November midterm date. Probably, we shouldn't expect an announcement on the F-35 thing until after that. That's for sure. Because that's a key point of leverage for us, of course. However, it is looking like on that front, because you've all heard the news now, the United States, even though Canada and Mexico signaled way before July 1st that they would like to continue the deal, the United States has decided at the moment to not extend the deal, which does not mean the deal is canceled. They have not given the 6-month notice that they want to pull out, and nothing has gone through Congress that way, because one of the things that the United States, particularly the Trump administration, the reason for which it would like to have two bilateral deals is that would probably take this out of the sphere of Congress. Congress hasn't been very cooperative with Donald Trump lately. They're sensing, they're smelling the crispiness on the duck being roasted. They're getting that odor, and they're becoming less and less cooperative, especially as it's becoming more and more clear that Donald Trump has less and less influence, and as is the case similarly for his endorsement. So there are more people stepping away and breaking away in subtle ways with him. Even the Supreme Court denied him his appeal on the E. Jean Carroll case, right? It's like, yes, Donald, we understand that it bothers you that people can refer to you forever henceforth as a judicially determined to be a sexual assaulter and even a rapist, considering what the judge in the case ruled after you tried to sue for defamation for someone having called you a rapist as a result of that judicial decision. But we, as the Supreme Court, many of us who you've named personally, thinking that we would do your bidding, but not realizing that once you appoint us, we're here till 75 and presidents have 2 terms. So at any time, we can just say no to you. Our positions are secure. Yours is not. And decided to not even hear the case. They also ruled that certain of his tariffs were illegal. One of the things that I kept on hearing was, didn't the court rule that his tariffs were illegal? Yes, the court ruled that certain very specific of his tariffs were illegal. They would have to have a whole other court case for all the other ones because Trump has picked and chosen, has cherry picked tariffs here and there to apply for different things. So they're probably all illegal for all intents and purposes. However, there's only one very specific set of tariffs that have been deemed illegal by the courts. All the other ones do stand. And Trump is not the type of person who likes to be told no, right? So when he's told no, he just tries to find another legal route or another path to start a whole new legal process from the beginning. And then, of course, hoping that he will deplete financially whoever it is that is trying to resist him. And the problem with that strategy for Americans in the world at the moment is that Donald Trump has the US Treasury as his entire piggy bank to finance these legal wild goose chases at the moment as president. As a private citizen, he has to find the money himself or find somebody that is willing to lend it to him or donate it to him. But as president of the United States, he can just bill it to the Justice Department, right? So this is it's a battle that nobody on the other side can win at the moment because nobody is as financially capable to maintain the pursuit. But that is the situation at the moment that has led, with everything going on, to the head of the IEA, the International Energy Agency, saying that there is a really good once in a generation opportunity for Canada right now to secure its place on the international scene as a safe and reliable and rules based player for the world to ensure that its economic security via energy security is met. So we've been talking, for example, about Germany buying some capacity on the Xilisms LNG project, even though they might not necessarily at first need it, and even though the pipeline is going through the west rather than the east, as Pierre Poilievre tried to make a political argument and dunk on the prime minister for not choosing the geographically shortest route. Yes, but also a route that would require us to build something from Western Canada all the way to the east, with the time and the various jurisdictional battles that would take, right? And Pierre seemingly having forgotten about swaps, cargo swaps, that they exist. That doesn't matter what route it travels. It just needs to be out of the ground and on a boat somewhere. And from that point on, the market has arranged ways to take care of those types of details itself. And there are other projects with that in the process. I think there's about 4 other different projects, LNG projects, that are currently in various stages of proposal and development that will be adding to what we are doing now. And that, of course, one of the advantages we have on that one is because the United States' LNG is all sort of organized on the other coast. And they're looking to build a project in Alaska at the moment. But at the moment, we have a temporary competitive advantage in terms of going west by being the first one of Canada, I'm going to guess Mexico, and the United States to have an LNG export terminal on the west coast. And we're looking to have a couple of others at this moment. So if it is true that there is this global opportunity, we also saw at the G7, most of the G7 nations signed something in a statement indicating that Canada is a place to look to for global security. We've also been hearing stories, for example, of more countries in the Gulf region, the Oman, United Arab Emirates, Iraq, Qatar, looking at maybe alternative shipping routes that would not go through Iran, but maybe go through Syria, given that it's becoming a more stable country, in order to ship their product out. There's other things shifting, even certain Asian markets that do rely a lot on supply coming from the Strait of Hormuz might want to have some backups. So maybe not as a primary supplier, but as some backups, because they fear that if it could happen once, it can happen again. And they don't want that interruption. They want to have a backup in their pocket that they can call upon, and make sure that their flow of energy is not interrupted. And Canada could be good for that. So there is, it would seem, a once in a generation opportunity to be able to seize on this current moment to show that we are indeed going ahead with product that people will be willing to buy space or capacity in these projects relatively quickly. And this would be the time to make that happen. If that is the case, then one would expect our prime minister, who has a reputation for being a risk manager and being a pragmatist, to be willing to bend on certain things more than he claimed that he was willing to at the beginning, and that indeed appears to have happened. Again, there's a trade off here. There's a trade off. The prime minister is willing to pretty much swallow himself whole on a rather key promise, or rather key condition, if not a promise, for this project to go ahead, in order to get it going as quickly as possible, in order to take advantage of the current generational moment. Now, that is a calculated risk, and one could say that it's based on the fact that the prime minister of the day happens to enjoy a little bit of political capital. And as a pundit once stated on Power Politics very recently, political capital is intended to be spent. And this might be the way that the Prime Minister of the day is going to spend it. It does create a bit of a Groundhog Day effect, in that Prime Minister Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, and Prime Minister Carney are both betting a lot on a pipeline to the West Coast. And that didn't really work out well for Justin Trudeau, politically speaking, even though it does seem to be economically benefiting the nation, as Justin Trudeau did claim it would. Prime Minister yesterday, in some remarks, and I wish I had noted the timestamp because I would show them specifically at this time, had remarked that the TMX pipeline that we have now is currently rather profitable at the moment, and that the bet that if you put in the money, eventually it would generate enough profit that it would start. you would start recuperating the cost. Has indeed started to happen and happened relatively quickly, but it has started to happen. It's also Trans Canada, the TMX pipeline, and pipelines in general is one of those um, boring, stable, predictable revenue generating types of infrastructure projects that things like pension funds and things of the like adore investing in. So there might be something there. But we also have a reality where we have a pipeline that is already built and that's already profitable that nobody's made an offer to buy. And one of the conditions of this new pipeline to the West Coast is that it would be spearheaded, both as a project and both in financial investment, by a private proponent. And we on the show have been wondering out loud how the heck that is going to be possible if people don't want to buy the one that's already built and making a profit. Danielle Smith has also made the finding of a private proponent much harder with her whole referendum scheme. So we were pretty for sure saying that this pipeline is never going to happen because Danielle Smith will never be able to make the conditions. We forgot to put the asterisks unless the Prime Minister is willing to not hold fast to that condition. And indeed, it seems that that is the case based on my understanding of the announcement yesterday. Um, Alberta lets go on its insistence that the pipeline must pass through northern BC, through the Hecate Strait. And uh, pretty much in exchange for that, they are allowed to continue moving this project, carrying this football down the field, even though it isn't even close to have a private sector proponent. In fact, it is so far from having a private sector proponent, we called this uh, so well, that the best it was able to do by this deadline was secure Pembina to be by its side with a heads of agreement, sort of a MOU, that in which it states that the agreement is non-binding for it, that at this stage it will be providing primarily expertise as its contribution. There is no indication of any money being put forward by Pembina at this time. There is a caveat that um, there is no risk-free money that Pembina would be putting in it at this time. So it's not willing to take any financial risk if it is putting any money. So I'm guessing that if it is putting any money, that if something is not going right, it is going to be reimbursed. It would seem. And then when it comes time to put in some money, Pembina is not looking at this moment to commit more than 10% of the cost of the project, with the option to buy up to another 10%. So at most, it would own 20%, which means who owns the other 80%? Now, there could be deals further on in this project, if the project goes on, for other companies to buy space in the pipeline and not only just paying a transport fee, but maybe buying an equity stake in it, which I'm guessing would reduce their transport fees somehow or have an impact on it, on the day to day operations. But at present, as it stands, there is $0 commitment from Pembina, but a commitment to take up 10% equity should the project be a go and be for real. And that is money that they would be willing to put in and put at risk. But until then, nothing, with the possibility of it being 20 and everything else being up to everybody else. So if there is no one else, that and Pembina went to the full 20, that would mean that 80% of the cost of this pipeline needs to be financed by someone, and it seems that that will be financed equally by the government of Alberta and Trans Mountain Corporation. Trans Mountain Corporation, which, of course, if you're paying attention, is wholly owned by the Government of Canada because it bought the Trans Mountain Twinning Pipeline. That is not what we were promised. When this was first pitched to us, we were promised, or we were told, that the objective was zero taxpayer dollar investment. Now, there was always going to be some taxpayer dollar investment when we started talking about Indigenous participation, because there's a fund out there to help Indigenous entrepreneurs buy shares and buy stakes in some of these projects. So let's say Indigenous owners buy 5% of the project, and Pembina puts down 10%, right? That then therefore makes an 85% contribution from the federal government, but the 5% contribution for the Indigenous share is also coming from the federal government. 85% is federal and provincial government in this case here. So yeah, there's a lot of money going in, and who knows what other de-risking conditions will be asked for by corporations as this goes further and further. It does seem as well that there's been an agreement on pathways, which is something that ever since it was suggested and agreed to, people have been trying to back out or wriggle out of it by either making the project smaller or saying that there's going to be needing some federal cash to go into that as well. That was something that was supposed to originally be paid entirely by the 5 organizations involved in it. That does not look like it will be the case, but we did not get further details on that specifically, on what that new agreement looks like. But that might mean more federal money than that was intended, but we do not have confirmation of that at the moment. So, yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about this, because you have to look at this on several ways. If you're looking at it as we must have a pipeline, we got to get it completed no matter which way. The Prime Minister did something that was very good and very clever yesterday, particularly the way it managed to get British Columbia on board while making it look like a big win for David Eby. We have a Prime Minister that's not afraid to share credit and make other people look good. All of this was preceded by another announcement in British Columbia that happened earlier about a new economic cooperative agreement, partnership agreement, the type that he signed recently with Ontario and signed with Quebec, that would have money for infrastructure and public transit and housing and various different things. And of course, a lot of commitments towards the projects that the British province of British Columbia had submitted, and they're at the major projects office. British Columbia has a few of them, and a lot of them were contingent on that tanker ban being maintained. So when the Prime Minister went to British Columbia to make this type of arrangement with Premier Eby, an arrangement that Premier Eby makes clear that the Prime Minister did not have to make, because when British Columbia was fighting TMX, they learned in court that they really do have no standing. So the Prime Minister could have just imposed whatever he wanted. But he did go to British Columbia, offered some help with their projects, did hear their concerns about the moratorium, did understand the link between the moratorium on tanker traffic in the north coast of British Columbia and the aspirations of the province, and took that and basically told Alberta, no, you can't have that. And probably did have to concede on the private proponent portion on this. The Prime Minister also, this pipeline is key to his own strategy in terms of diversifying Canadian markets, and therefore was always probably willing to put a little water in his wine. But again, with the confluence of all these things that are happening on the global stage at the same time, that the Prime Minister could not have predicted at the time that he started these negotiations with Alberta would be the case. Um, Again, pragmatically, could be seeing the opportunity and therefore seeing the long term potential of this type of project, at least economically, and for our goal of diversifying away from the United States, particularly our bitumen shipments, so that we can get more money for them. Again, probably did the math and decided that this was a calculated risk that he was willing to take. It could also still be um, that same point about putting the ball in Danielle Smith's camp and seeing whether or not she can run with it, because, of course, this does have to go to the Major Projects Office for approval, considering how far back the Prime Minister is willing to bend on a private proponent in order to move the ball further. There seems to be very little doubt that it will get that designation come October. There's also a calendar that one has to remember in the back of all of this, right? October 1st, the date is the date by which the Major Projects Office has to determine whether or not this project will get its seal of approval to be fast tracked. October 5th is the Quebec provincial election. The federal government probably does not want to send a sign to Quebec that it's not willing to support Alberta on this particular type of project before that vote happens. Given that the decision comes before the vote, it would be kind of hard to take a decision that would go against Alberta's interests, still hope for a good result in Quebec, right? And then hope for a good result on October 19th, which is the Alberta referendum. 18 days before that referendum, you certainly don't want to put out an announcement from the Major Projects Office that says, sorry, you have been denied. And you certainly can't say yes on the 1st and then uh, a couple days later, either right after the Quebec election, but before the Alberta referendum, which would still be suicide, or the day after the Alberta referendum around the 20th or 21st. Well, no, we don't think that that's good enough anymore. That would be two swings of position that would be so big in about 20 days that it would cause political whiplash. And now, again, these are things you can do if you're willing to take the hit, but it seems rather unlikely, again, for someone that has the profile of being a risk manager and a pragmatist. Um, so it seems that, yeah, unless there's something else that happens down the road that makes it such that this project cannot go through, that both the government of Alberta and the government of Canada have decided to swallow themselves whole. You have Danielle Smith pretty much admitting that the Justin Trudeau model for getting the first TMX built was the right one. And even though she complained about it the entire time and never give the former prime minister any credit whatsoever for having gotten the thing built in the first place, she's now agreeing to much government money. And in this case, if this deal goes through, it would be less federal money because last time we paid for the whole damn thing. At least now it's half and half with Alberta. But she is going to have to explain why it is that in 2025, without the 9 bad laws, allegedly, that it is that the government of Alberta has to put Albertans' taxpayers' money to work for the project. So is the Prime Minister. I'm going to have to explain that. But Alberta, I think Danielle Smith might have a harder time. Because not only does she have Indigenous groups and environmentalists against her, she also has the separatists who don't want an Alberta pipeline to the West Coast built. They would rather have another Alberta pipeline going south because, well, they're not actually working for Albertans, are they? Because you would think that Alberta separatists, if they actually wanted their own country that would survive as their own country, would be very keen on having a pipeline going south and a pipeline going west for its own future. But the separatists are somehow very, 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 very much against that. They're also very much against anything that could create the impression that Alberta and Canada could work together, right? So that pretty much looks like the deal. We will go and read a couple of articles for you here, kids and cubs. Um, let's see what we have here. Whoop, that's a little weird there. There was some video that just popped up all of a sudden, which would not be really great. So this is from Rukhsar Ali of CBC News. Alberta has formally proposed an oil pipeline to the southwest coast of British Columbia for tanker export to Asian markets in partnership with federally owned Trans Mountain Corp and Calgary-based Pembina Pipeline Corporation acting as the private proponent. That that particular wording is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Premier Danielle Smith announced the province's submission to the Federal Major Projects Office in Calgary in a joint press conference with Prime Minister Mark Carney on Thursday evening. The estimated cost of the project, according to the Alberta government's submission, would be $35.2 billion to $43.7 billion, including contingencies. It expects the approximately 1,200 to 1,250 kilometer pipeline project to be completed between 2032 and 2034. Despite long suggesting a possible northern route for the new bitumen pipeline, the two main routing proposals Sorry. Despite long suggesting a possible northern route for the new bitumen pipeline, the two main routing options proposed will run between Bruderheim, Alberta, northeast of Edmonton, to Roberts Bank Terminal in Delta, British Columbia, using a similar corridor to the existing Trans Mountain pipeline. One route is referred to as the original corridor in the submission, while the other is called the optimized corridor. For the original corridor, roughly 92% of the route would be within 100 meters of existing infrastructure or land that's already been disturbed. For the optimized option, that number drops to 82%. Quote, we've agreed that the best route for a new pipeline is one that goes through one that already exists south through the Trans Mountain corridor to our Pacific coast, the gateway to the world's fastest growing markets, Carney said. Smith said the southern route had key advantages, given that it would be roughly along an existing pipeline route, including established relationships with indigenous communities and less time to get oil to market. The West Coast Oil Pipeline will transport more than 1 million barrels of oil per day to Canada's west coast and strengthen access to growing Asian markets, helping to meet Alberta's goal to double oil production to 8 million barrels per day over the next 10 to 15 years. The announcement comes the same day Ottawa signed a multi-billion-dollar memorandum of understanding with British Columbia, which included a commitment from the federal government to keep the North Coast oil tanker ban in place. The moratorium has prohibited oil tanker traffic off the waters of northern British Columbia for years in order to protect environmentally sensitive coastlines. And yet Pierre Poilievre commenting that tankers travel through there all the time. They don't. He's lying. The Alberta government said it chose to propose a path near the Trans Mountain pipeline to limit, quote, new land disturbance and impacts on the environment, wildlife, and nearby communities. In its submission, the province said it anticipates the project would pass through the traditional territories of approximately 90 to 125 Indigenous communities, and the corridor would cross about 9 to 11 First Nations reserves in British Columbia. The document also says the project is planned on an accelerated timeline, with early work beginning as soon as October 2027. That early work would include finalizing routes, engaging with Indigenous groups, securing permits, and preparing construction sites. Alberta's submission touts the creation of thousands of jobs for its residents as well as British Columbia's, with as many as 140,000 during its peak construction period in the early 2030s and about 50,000 during ongoing operations. While no oil producers have committed to utilizing the potential pipeline as of yet, Smith told reporters that discussions continue with the Oil Sands Alliance, a group of 5 major companies. As for who foots the bill, Smith said detailed funding and the cost for taxpayers remains to be negotiated. That's never a good sign. You would think that that would be clear by now. Pembina Pipeline said that it will hold a 10% economic interest in the project once construction begins. The company said it will have an opportunity to increase its stake in the project by another 10% once the pipeline is operational. In a statement, Pembina said it will have full discretion over any final investment decisions for its interest and will not risk any of its own capital before those choices are made. Most of the oil transported by the project is expected to go to Asian markets with potential destinations including China, India, South Korea, and Japan, according to the submission. Among its economic benefits, the province says the project could narrow the price gap between Canadian heavy crude oil and the benchmark U.S. oil by $3 US a barrel. Energy analyst and economist Peter Tertzakian said diversifying to the West Coast and into global markets would lessen the impact of the differential, referring to the price gap between WTI and the Canadian price of oil the Western Canadian Select. The reason that Canada has experienced periods of wider differentials over the past 10 to 15 years, Tertzakian said, is because production exceeds shipping capacity, leaving the country hostage to a handful of American refineries. By diversifying, we are much less susceptible to potential, either artificial or otherwise, backups in our oil production, and therefore shield ourselves from these debilitating differentials, he said. But for Chris Severson Baker, executive director of the Pembina Institute, a nonpartisan clean energy think tank different from Pembina Pipeline, Ottawa and Alberta's announcement is too risky for a world where, quote, the market for oil is evaporating quite quickly, moving instead towards electrification. Quote, after a whole year of both levels of government saying we were going to hold out for a private proponent of the pipeline, we have another almost 100% funded by taxpayer pipeline, he said. So except for that 10% that Pembina Pipeline would take on, this is a taxpayer-owned pipeline. If we tie up a lot of taxpayer money in an oil and gas infrastructure, then we're going to have a harder time finding the money that we need to invest in the national electrification strategy, Severson Baker added. Given the new details, Al Salazar, head of macro oil and gas research at Enverus, told CBC News that the pipeline, quote, feels a little bit more doable than it did at the start of the year. Quote, I think it's remarkably optimistic, he said. I think certainly the northern route was more desirable, but from a regulatory perspective, if you're parallel along with TMS, that should be easier. And the fact that they said it's going from Bruderheim to a VLCC, very large crude carrier, compatible port, that seems like it checks off a lot of boxes. Still, the question of which producers will actually commit to moving their oil through the pipeline lingers after Thursday's announcement. For Dennis McConaughey, that question is top of mind, and he told CBC News he isn't finding himself moved from a position of skepticism. The former TransCanada Pipeline executive and author of Dysfunction, Canada After Keystone XL, describes his career as, quote, actually conceiving these projects and bringing them to fruition, even if, like in the case of Keystone, they don't always reach the finish line. Quote, all those projects had both the private financing available to them. They had bona fide entities, whether they were refiners or producers, that had the financial capacity to make long-term commitments to make those projects financeable. That isn't evident as of yet, he said. In a press conference in Vancouver on Thursday morning, in a press conference in Vancouver on Thursday morning, BC Premier David Eby, who has been staunchly opposed to the pipeline proposal, said his province does not have the authority to stop a new pipeline and confirmed it will not fight it in court. He added that the province will ensure that it fulfills its constitutional obligations in good faith. Quote, the fact that that tanker ban is uplifted, respected, and committed to again by the federal government in this agreement is a significant win for British Columbia, Eby said. We have anxiety about the impact of any new pipeline project, period, on British Columbia's coast, which is why in this agreement there are very clear safeguards in place around spill protection around British Columbia's participation. The Ottawa BC agreement states that the two parties will negotiate a legally binding framework that ensures the province will receive economic benefits through the project, potentially including an annual royalty payment from the pipeline operator to BC and an environmental liability and emergency response fund held in trust that BC and First Nations could access. The federal government will also support the Roberts Bank Terminal 2 expansion in Delta, British Columbia, a project which will expand the port's shipping capacity by 50%. Ottawa's support for a West Coast pipeline is linked to building the Pathways carbon capture and storage project to offset some of the emissions from increased oil production. Pathways is a project long proposed by the Oil Sands Alliance, formerly the Pathways Alliance. On Thursday, Carney said his government, the Alberta government, and the Oil Sands Alliance have agreed on the terms to launch the Pathways project. He said the agreement will result in 16 million tons of emissions reductions per year. Now that the pipeline proposal is in, the Major Projects Office will review the application, and it has until October 1st to designate it as a project of national interest. Post-review, the office may decline the project altogether, refer it to another relevant. Let's try that again. Post-review, the office may decline the project altogether, refer it to other relevant federal departments or agencies, or identify areas for further engagement by the office, according to its website. The Major Projects Office was established last August to help fast-track infrastructure that was deemed in Canada's national interest. All right. So that is the main outlines of that agreement here. Specifically, when it comes to the north coastline here. Um, it's said that, um, as we mentioned here, Carney reaffirmed uh, that ban, and it came as part of a new multi-billion-dollar Canada-British Columbia Cooperative Prosperity Agreement. He announced alongside Premier David Eby in Vancouver Thursday. The agreement includes money for mining, forestry, and upgrading the Massey Tunnel and Port of Vancouver in BC's Lower Mainland. And this is in addition to the infrastructure money that was announced around June 18th, in which that whole issue of buying unoccupied condominiums from developers at liquidation prices first surfaced. The uh, plan that the Conservatives are calling a bailout. It's not. Because when you're bailing out, you usually don't do it in exchange for an asset, number one. But number two, when we're looking at that, right, the federal government is again looking at a sort of once in generational opportunity to be able to buy homes that it says uh, would be at a price lower than at which it could build them from scratch. And that would get around, they're looking at a number around 2,200. I've heard another number, 4,000, but whatever those numbers are, a number of those units to be able to purchase, and so that people can move in them more quickly, and that there would be some type of financial structure where the government would only put in a certain amount, I think would be like 10% of the total amount of the program, but create some new financial structures so that the people that would be moving into these homes would have a rent to buy option. So the federal government is looking at an opportunity to buy a certain number of homes at a price lower than it would cost them to build them from scratch and get people in them sooner because they're already unoccupied, and therefore you could get people into affordable homes faster. Again, Conservatives are labeling this to be a bailout of some kind. A lot of people are claiming that it is not. We do not believe that it is in this case. However, right, more details need to be finalized about how all of that is going to take place. On that front, the Conservatives have demanded an ethics committee investigation, and they got one. And now they're saying, yes, the ethics committee saw that there was reason to investigate this. There's nothing yet to investigate. The terms of the deal by which the federal government would go out and buy these and make them available as rent to own to people have not yet been finalized. There actually is nothing to investigate. The developers in British Columbia are all over the media saying, we didn't ask for this. We don't want this. The government in British Columbia is all over the media saying, this is our idea. We proposed it. But yet the Conservatives seem to believe that there's some type of underhanded thing that happened between the Carney government and developers that requires an ethics investigation. And the reason for which they got their ethics investigation, because Civics 101 in Canada, when we have a federal government that is a majority, there are about 2 or 3 committees, right? When you have the committees, that means the federal government has the chair of those committees, but there are 2 or 3 committees by design where the federal government does not have that. And one of them is the ethics committee. The ethics committee is always led by the official opposition, is always chaired by the official opposition. So the Conservatives wanted an ethics investigation, and they ran to the one committee on which they have a majority, or one of the 2, maybe, on which they have a majority, and asked the chair of that committee, do you agree that there's reason to investigate? And of course, the Conservative chair of the ethics committee agreed with the Conservative proposal to that this would require some type of ethical investigation on the part of the committee, even though there doesn't exist a finalized deal yet that has terms that are worthy of investigating. So yes, we're getting a lot of political theater, and the Conservatives will say the ethics committee has approved. Just remember, that's a committee that is chaired by the Conservatives. Just going to take a look here. What are the other ones? So the public accounts. It says in the Canadian Parliament, five, sorry, I thought it was three. 5 House of Commons and standing joint committees are traditionally chaired by the official opposition to ensure accountability. These specific committees are the Public Accounts Committee, which examines the public accounts of Canada and all reports of the Auditor General, the Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics Committee, which focuses on government transparency, privacy laws, and ethical standards, the Government Operations and Estimates, which reviews the estimates and operations of various government departments and agencies, Status of Women, which studies policies, programs, and legislation that impact women and gender equality. That's how the Conservatives were able to kick Karen Vecchio, their own MP, away from the chair position, even though she was working very well in the position. Everybody respected her, but she wasn't pure enough. She was too pro-choice for the liking of the Conservatives, so they pulled her off that. And the Scrutiny of Regulations, which is a standing joint committee which reviews and scrutinizes statutory instruments and government regulations. So again, this is not the decision from some independent person that looked at it and said, "Oh my God, on this face, this is so incredibly unethical that this warrants an investigation now." This is just conservatives amplifying conservatives on a premature enunciation, pretty much. So that's just a little sort of aside here that you need to know that anything that you're going to be hearing about that is for partisan consumption only, and it's all tinged and slanted. It says here that with regards to the British Columbia Canada Cooperative Prosperity Agreement that was signed, quote, British Columbia is the linchpin, the gateway to a more prosperous, sustainable, and inclusive Canada, Carney said. This agreement is comprehensive, it is ambitious, and it will help transform the entire Canadian economy. EB called the agreement a landmark generational deal that's about building the kind of province we want for generations to come. The premier was back in British Columbia, fresh off his first trade mission to China, where he was promoting the province's energy, agriculture, and tourism industry trade mission that he ended up cutting short in order to be back to have those discussions with the prime minister yesterday. So let's see here. There's might be a couple of clips from this moment that would be interesting to bring to you. I'm just going to go take a look here. And we'll go to Mr. Scott Robertson's feed because, again, he is very, very helpful when it comes to these types of clips. So let's see here. So, okay, right now, this one here is the first one that we have. First one that we have here is Pierre Poilievre stating one of his big lies here. And this is Scott Robertson here. This is Pierre Poilievre lying about the amount of traffic in those same Pacific waters where the moratorium was upheld.
I think the North Coast ban is ridiculous. American tankers travel through those same Pacific waters all the time, from Alaska to the U.S. West Coast. So why does Mark Carney believe it's safe for our American tankers carrying American oil from Alaska to California is safe, but it's not safe for us to send Canadian oil over to Asia through the same passages? I think that...
Okay, so again, that is Pierre Poilievre delivering just a bold-faced lie. American tankers do not travel through those same waters all the time. They just do not. There's no record of that whatsoever. With regard to the condo purchase program, sorry, we're going a little bit all over the place, but this is the order that the clips are in, since we were just talking about it. This is the moment in the press conference where David Eby decides to take the question and look at the Prime Minister in back and follow his reaction to what the Premier is saying here.
A lot of people, politicians and pundits from across the political spectrum have labeled this a condo bailout. And so, you've had some time to iron out some more of the details. So I'm wondering what benefits, if any, would be seen by developers?
Thanks. I'll take this one. You're hearing directly from developers that this is not what they asked for. And it is not, from their perspective, a bailout. When you buy something that's on liquidation, you don't say to yourself, I'm supporting a bailout for the store. This is an opportunity for us to recognize the reality that people can't wait for housing. We can buy housing at below our construction cost and make it available affordably. And if we don't do it, someone else will do it, large private sector investors, and make them available for rent for profit and then flip them. These condos will be purchased. And so we're seeking to purchase a small number of them to make them available for affordable housing at a price we could not build them for, and on a timeline we could not deliver them on. I would like the opportunity to actually launch this program so that British Columbians and Canadians can see it and see the opportunity that is presented here. As just one example, we have absolutely no plans to do this in Vancouver because the numbers just don't work. And yet much of the critique I hear is about downtown Vancouver developers. So if we could have an opportunity to launch this program, to get people into housing faster, to leverage the ability of government to be able to get people into affordable housing as quickly as possible, I would appreciate that. I think it's an important initiative, and if people hate it, hey, we don't have to do it, but it is a chance for us to make a real difference in the lives of more than 2,000 families.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. Federal government pleased to participate in a small way, but in an impactful way. And Minister Robertson is here, a small way, impactful way, in order to create the flexibility to do exactly what the Premier just said. Take advantage of distress in some developers. Take advantage for the purposes of affordable housing for families in this province, and affordable housing, including with potential rent-to-own model. And in the end, this is the proof of the pudding is in the eating. It's in the actual transaction. If those opportunities present themselves, we've created the flexibility in order to get affordable housing to people at a cheaper price than could be built. We'll do it. If the market shifts, if the opportunity doesn't present itself, then it won't happen. But this is a smart way to do it. And as last thing, I'll just reemphasize: what happens in real estate over time is a bad development becomes a good development on the second or third owner. But in between, there's that opportunity for hardworking families that can't find affordable housing. And I commend the BC government for the idea of creating this, and we're happy to help make that a reality.
A lot of people.
So there you have that, Kits and Cubs. So basically, the Conservatives are trying to present this as a debate between money going to developers and money not going to developers, when the point is that money is always going to be going to developers, whether or not the government pays developers to build new from scratch that people will be able to move into X number of years from now, right, or X number of months from now, or whether or not the federal government pays developers to buy things that are already built and unoccupied at liquidation prices and move people into them now. So the Conservatives here are actually making the case that out of some desire to purity, to not give any money to developers, which is going to be impossible, because money goes to developers no matter which way you do that, is making the case for not housing people now, making them wait with all the extra costs to society that incurs. So it's not a serious debate being proposed by the Conservatives here. It's not a serious ethics investigation. It's not. All of this is mere political theater. The Liberals suggested it. Therefore, we are going to knee-jerk react. And the Liberals, like I said, the entire project, I think, is about the $3.2 billion, where there's a division in that, two different types of fees in there, and that the federal government would be putting up about 10% of a certain portion of it in order to create the flexible structures. And so there would be actually very little money going to developers, particularly if from the Canadian government. But if there was some type of rent to own capacity with regard to any of that, that burden would go on to the people who are actually living there, and that money would be paid in real time as people are living there, and not one big sort of lump sum from the federal government to specific conservatives are claiming would be the case. But you'll see there that when the Prime Minister was listening to the answer from the Premier, he was like, "Oh, yeah, that's right. That recommendation, he's got it." And then the Prime Minister came in to build on that, to stress that they are taking advantage of a distress situation. To be more specific about the federal government's portion here, said the government could potentially put up to 10% of roughly $1.45 billion. So about $145 million is all that would cost the federal government to be able to create some type of system where 2,200 households could gain homes much more quickly than they would be able to if they had to wait for them to be built from scratch and at a cost that's lower. And the BC government would foot the rest of the bill for this entire program. I don't know what can't remember off the top of my head what the 3.2 billion number with regard to it is referring to here. But continuing here, this is an article by Nick Logan that goes into it. People need affordable homes, and thousands of empty condos in British Columbia are waiting to be sold. The federal government has an idea to help with both. Prime Minister Mark Carney is partnering with BC government to convert vacant condos into affordable housing. Speaking in Ottawa on Thursday, Carney said that under the program he laid out in Vancouver last week, the government would potentially put up to 10% of roughly $1.5 billion in total spending to convert some 2,200 empty units into rent-to-own homes, with the BC government footing the rest of the bill. The Prime Minister has said last week that he's leveraging financial tools to increase the housing supply, while opposition leader Pierre Poilievre later skewered the scheme as a bailout for big developers and, quote, a transfer of wealth from the have-nots to the have-yachts. And he's not the only critic. Responding to that criticism, Carney insisted Thursday that the proposal is about supporting aspiring homeowners. But the public doesn't know enough about how the government plans to acquire the unsold units, said Mike Moffat, founding director of the Missing Middle Initiative at the University of Ottawa. And without the finer details, he said the doors left wide open to criticism and skepticism. And the Prime Minister, that's why, made a point to stress in his comments here that when this is ready to go, if that opportunity exists to do it, then it's an opportunity to go ahead. And if it isn't, if it doesn't, then you don't. This doesn't bind anyone to do it. It just creates the tool or the mechanism to be there should that opportunity be available. Quote, I do think this can be a win-win if structured correctly, he told CBC News this week, but I also understand why people are skeptical. There are issues with housing affordability and home sales across the country, but other cities don't have the volume of unsold condos that you have in Metro Vancouver and the Greater Toronto Area, said Andy Yan, director of the City Lab at Simon Fraser University in Burnaby, BC. Market analyst Urbanation reported in April that a record high of 4,295 newly completed condos in the GTA were unsold in the first quarter of 2026, more than double a year before. Recent data from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation shows that as of last month, there were 4,376 completed condos sitting empty in Metro Vancouver, a 76% increase from the same period a year ago. Even with the glut of empty new homes and prices dropping, many Canadians remain priced out of the market. Yan said that there needs to be surgical responses to dealing with housing sales and affordability rather than blanket approaches. Quote, these are units that have been built, but we do not know why they haven't been absorbed by the market, he said, questioning who may be best served by this condo conversion plan and how it may ease affordability. And there's a graphic here talking about or illustrating condo prices in Toronto and Vancouver as they have been lately. And we were talking about inflation numbers recently and the price of housing and how it has been shifting. So this will give you an idea, particularly in the two major markets, Toronto and Vancouver, about how that is actually looking. So here we've got the graph. Let's see if we can make it a little bigger. There we go. The red line is Vancouver and the blue line is Toronto. So we see here in Vancouver, housing prices reached a peak of about $772,200 in 2023, and that has now dropped down to 688,800, which is, not a negligible decrease. It's almost $100,000. I'm going to guess that this is a price per unit here. And in Toronto, it reached a peak of 713,400 in 2022 and has been decreasing steadily for the past 4 years to about 530,600. So that is also a very significant drop, about $150,000 per unit since that time. So affordability is getting better, but prices had spiked to such levels that for a lot of people, it's still out of market. A lot has changed in the past decade, Brad Jones, Chief Development Officer for West Group Properties, told CBC Vancouver's The Early Edition on Wednesday, including inflation and changes to immigration policy that contributed to declining population growth. Still, he said that if the industry wanted a bailout, we would have asked for it. Jones said developers wanted something similar to the deal the federal government struck with Ontario in March to eliminate the GST for first-time homebuyers, while also reducing municipal development charges. The other aspect of the BC-Canada partnership is the $1.6 billion from the federal government over 10 years, matched by the province in order to lower development charges for multi-unit housing in priority communities. That's it. So that $1.6 billion added to the $1.45 billion project for the other thing makes it about a $3 billion deal. That's where the number came from. Those fees can increase the cost of constructing condos by as much as 30%, said Wendy McNeil, CEO of the Home Builders Association in Vancouver. She said she does not see that as a bailout, but as supporting an industry that delivers necessary housing while shouldering a very heavy financial burden. All right. The lack of information from government may have home builders and home buyers scratching their heads, but Moffat says there's an important distinction to consider. If this was something that government wasn't going to purchase anyway, then I think this is a bailout, he told CBC News. But he said the Carney government's Build Canada Homes Agency would have been turning to developers to construct new homes. Instead, in BC at least, they'll be acquiring finished condo units. At this point, it's not clear how much the federal and provincial government may ultimately spend on purchasing these empty units, Moffat said in an interview on Tuesday, and we don't know how much of a discount they might be sold for compared to listing prices. And that's a very important point, because given that we were seeking to build housing anyway, right? If there's some housing that's available and that's at below building cost, why wouldn't you buy it? Right? You're just moving forward a purchase you would have made eventually, and you're getting it at a better deal. And you get to house people quicker. Quote, if they're paying something close to full price, then yeah, I think it would be fair to characterize that as a bailout, he said. But if they're coming in and forcing companies to take a steep discount and at the same time acquiring homes that they were going to build anyway, then I think this can make sense. And it might be in the interest of developers because they don't want to have this inventory on their books. They would rather sell it, get a certain amount of the money back at a deep discount, and then have that money in the bank to help finance their next project, right? The Ottawa BC government partnership is actually just following the lead of private investment companies that are already bulk buying condo inventory at discounted prices in both Vancouver and Toronto, Moffat said. But Yan suggested it could raise some eyebrows among buyers and owners who already purchased their homes. You can imagine what happens when you bought a unit in one of these buildings and then the government buys the same unit next door, he said. What happens to the pricing of that unit for the government, but also for that particular owner who bought into that building? He said the spike in unsold condos is recent enough that it may be better to allow the market to correct itself rather than the government jumping in. So that is a consideration there, given that it is still a relatively new phenomenon, but it really is sort of a perfect storm of elements where there was a big construction boom, and then there was more global uncertainty. And when you put it all together, the condos stopped selling for at least this period of time. And it's created an opportunity where there are some distressed assets that could be purchased at a liquidation price, and therefore an opportunity that is seized by the government if they decide to go ahead with this in order to achieve some of their goals a little earlier and perhaps at a lower price, which is never a bad thing. All right, let's see what else we have here. Looking for a few more quotes here from the people involved in some of these announcements. So we had that. This is the Prime Minister stating explicitly in his agreement, in his announcement in British Columbia yesterday, that that the tanker ban would remain in effect.
We're also clear that today's Canada-BC agreement will maintain the federal North Coast tanker ban in accordance with the proposed route of a new trans-provincial pipeline under the bilateral agreement with Canada and Alberta.
So that was the Prime Minister making the statement at 10:31 a.m. Pacific time yesterday. And then we have, of course, Premier Eby backing that up about 5 minutes later or so in the press conference here. So it was the Prime Minister who made that news yesterday, and it was indeed afterwards confirmed by Premier Eby in that same press conference.
I am very proud to say that through our discussions and negotiations with the federal government, we have secured a commitment to keep the northern tanker ban firmly in place, protecting British Columbia's pristine northern coast and the $2 billion plus economy that relies on it.
And that was Premier Eby, again, confirming that announcement. And of course, that's a major win for British Columbia in these talks. This is also Premier Eby making a very key point here with regard to the legal realities. He's not pretending that they do not exist, but again, making the point that this is not a project
For the environmental
that
risks we would take.
This is not a project for which he has much enthusiasm in the first place.
This agreement doesn't require us to support any pipeline proposal from Alberta. However, as I've said before, we recognize our constitutional position, and we do not have the authority to stop a new pipeline. We will not be going to court to fight a pipeline project. Instead, we will ensure we fulfill our constitutional obligations in good faith. Pipelines are federal jurisdiction. That's why this agreement matters. It ensures that the northern tanker ban stays in place. And it ensures that if a pipeline goes ahead, that British Columbians are fairly compensated for the environmental risks we would take on any new pipeline project.
So there you have David Eby adopting the different political strategy than conservatives do in Canada, even though they are told that the decision has already been made legally and that that cannot survive, or that they have no case. For example, as was the case with fighting the right of the federal government to impose a carbon price on consumers. They pursued that all the way to the Supreme Court, even though everybody told them from the get-go that it was soundly structured. But they needed to spend Canadian taxpayers' dollars to be seen as fighting it. So it was all marketing for something that they knew they were going to lose eventually. So you had Premier David Eby making a joke yesterday, stating that this is obviously high-stakes time for Canada. The big game's coming up. This is a prime minister that is a tough negotiator and very persuasive, so do not be surprised if you see some Moroccan players crossing the field in advance of the game. Ah, man. Interesting. Um, and this here is the prime minister while being there to announce more funding for the province of British Columbia with that partnership making the case that British Columbia is indeed a linchpin of the Canadian economy.
As in a more dangerous and divided world, our strategy has been and continues to be to focus on what we can control, building our strength here at home and diversifying our partnerships abroad. And today, a series of initiatives we're going to announce, anchored here in British Columbia. We will catalyze, through these initiatives, over $200 billion in new investment, while advancing our trade agenda across Asia. In all cases, British Columbia is the linchpin, the gateway to a more prosperous, more sustainable, and a more inclusive Canada. And I want to thank you, Premier Eby, for your leadership in making this possible, and that of your colleagues who are here this morning.
So there you have it, kits and cubs, and a little bit of a quick review on some of the things that were in that overall agreement to help British Columbia. Was, as we mentioned, nearly 1.6 billion over 10 years, matched by British Columbia for a total of up to 3.2 billion, to lower development charges for multi-unit housing by up to 50% in priority communities, saving up to $40,000 per unit, and expand housing enabling infrastructure such as water systems, wastewater systems, and local roads. More than $600 million over 3 years, matched by British Columbia for a total of up to 1.2 billion, to modernize and expand health infrastructure such as hospitals, emergency rooms, urgent care centers, and other critical facilities so more British Columbians can get faster healthcare when they need it, and up to $50 million over 5 years to support community infrastructure projects in coastal communities with priority to projects in Terrace and Prince Rupert. To further accelerate home building in British Columbia, the Government of Canada has introduced legislation that would provide a one-time transfer of $284 million to British Columbia to reduce barriers to new construction. Then they mentioned, of course, in it, the condo conversion deal that could be in there. And then they mentioned through the Canada Public Transit Fund, the government will invest $2.5 billion over 10 years to build new transit projects, such as the Surrey Langley SkyTrain extension project that is currently underway, and increase service access and frequency in high traffic areas. This funding is in addition to the $852 million previously announced by the federal government to support TransLink and BC Transit. And then, of course, each side, the Government of Canada and British Columbia, will be providing $100 million for the construction of a new school and in Tumbler Ridge, and renovations to the local health center as well. So those were some main key announcements. And here, Kits and Cubs, I must correct myself again, because the $3.2 billion number I was thinking of was through the Buildings Communities Strong Fund to lower development charges for multi-housing. So that was 1.6 billion from the federal government, matched by British Columbia for a total of 3.2. And then on top of that, there's the 1.45 billion for the condo conversion program, 10% of which is supplied by the federal government, and then that 1.6 billion in addition for all those other projects that are a little more infrastructure related, as it pertains to some of this activity. So different pools of money here. It's hard to keep them all straight at the same time. But so that big deal was announced. Meanwhile, in Alberta yesterday, Danielle Smith had her own announcement going on with regard to what the future of gas might be in Alberta. Um, the situation in Alberta is that it is one of the highest cost jurisdictions for electricity because most of electricity is supplied by burning natural gas. Alberta has uh, made a lot of efforts over the last little while to get off of coal, right? And said Danielle Smith in that press conference uh, said something with regard to that. She said, I think this is an example that when we're moving into a world where affordability is a major issue, where energy underpins the cost of everything, and where consumers are feeling the pinch of it, you have to respond to that. And that was one of the things we've been advocating for 3.5 years, especially when in this particular announcement, it comes to electricity. Our market here is 90% of our baseload power comes from natural gas. I mean, solar and wind were able to lend a hand from time to time, but we phased out coal onto natural gas. And then the federal government's approach would have had us phase out of natural gas within 10 years. It was putting us in an incredible crisis situation, not only to be able to support one of our consumers currently, not only to be able to support our consumers currently, but also have future growth. So what I've observed is in the past 2 years, because of the increasing demands for AI data centers, there was an impossibility of trying to maintain the old net zero power regs as well as be able to support that new emerging industry. So Danielle Smith, when we were looking at her attitude towards renewables, when we're looking to attitude to fighting Ottawa on everything, and a seeming resistance on her part to be welcoming to nuclear or to have interties between the Alberta electricity system and electricity systems from other provinces, all had to do with her buying enough time to find another client for Alberta's gas industry and diversifying her economy. And it seems that Danielle Smith, who went down to Mar-a-Lago with Kevin O'Leary, who seems to have a hard time getting one of his data centers approved down there, seems to be going all in on data centers. And data centers, as you know, are energy hogs. So, in order to ensure that data centers would be able to go forward, at least for now, they have to, it's basically bring your own energy. They have to build their own energy supply. And what better way to ensure that AI data centers that would come and establish themselves in Alberta would have to power themselves using Alberta natural gas than by ensuring that no new development in renewables could be taking place while they're waiting for that to happen. Ah, yeah, yeah. So, um, along with Pembina, again, Scott Burrows, the president and CEO of Pembina Pipeline Corporation, was at this press event and as basically uh, where it was basically announced that in Alberta, uh, Pembina is going to be building uh, the gas plant, I'm going to guess, that is required for a data center to be able to come and set up in Alberta and be using exclusively Alberta gas. So, if we are going to be moving to electrification over the past 10 years, and Alberta is going to be opening itself up to interties with other provinces and maybe even bringing in some nuclear so that more baseload power from Alberta can be supplied by nuclear rather than gas, which would be cleaner, and more baseload power would be insured by Alberta because it could get electricity from other provinces when it is running short. Um, you can't, according to Danielle Smith, you can't allow that to be an argument to then move off of gas. You need to find another client for the gas, and that is going to be AI data centers. This is just because of the sheer amount of energy AI data centers consume. The thought of AI data centers that are powered by natural gas for people who are thinking green, that could provoke the sound of those sharp violin stings from the shower scene in the movie Psycho. Those horror movie music, yeet, 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 sort of stings, because I'm going to guess that that is a significant amount of GHGs. But yeah, it looks like that is indeed what's going on here. Was hoping to single out a clip from that announcement, but there's not one specifically that has been singled out by anyone, and I didn't necessarily take down a note for myself. But here, there was a question posed soon after the announcement. It was the first question actually into the Q&A that was brought to us by Global News, and asking about the government's sort of overall position towards them, considering the amount of skepticism and fear that has been expressed by the general public with regard to them. So let's bring that to you here.
We'll now enter our media Q&A portion of the announcement. A reminder to media on the phones and in the room, we'll be taking one question, one follow-up, and please state your name and outlet before asking your question. We'll start off here in the room. Go ahead first with the mic.
Tyler Peters with Global News. Happy stampeding. Got a question just about data centers in general. I know this is about the power for them, but I think when people hear the term data centers, there's a lot of fear of the unknown, concern, environmental impacts, water reliability, in addition to the electricity that you've talked about today, and the overall economic impact. A lot of people wonder if it's worth it. Can you just maybe outline some of the conversations you've had, if you've had them with concerned citizens, about what this can do for our province as a whole, and the life that they're used to is going to be maintained while this happens?
Yeah, I had a chance actually to go to Olds and have a town hall where I heard from residents about their concerns. And one of the big issues that they raised was about the power source, so a large natural gas power source, being located close to residential properties. So one of the things that I would say about this project being located in Sturgeon County, it's in an area in the industrial heartland that has been well accepted by the community for over 40 years for industrial development. I think the closest home is some kilometers away from where this natural gas plant is going to be. And so I think we have to be mindful of that as we're going through and looking at our electricity policy and some of the guidance that we'll have to give to AI data centers as they're doing this build your own power approach. We want to make sure that those concerns of the local area residents are addressed and there's an appropriate distance between homes. The second issue and I think a lot of it comes from looking at jurisdictions that did have some difficulties in managing power prices. When we set out on developing our policy, we were very clear with the industry that we only had a certain amount of power available for data centers. Actually, it's thanks to Connecticut that our power prices have come down, because when Cascades came on, that also gave us a little bit of a buffer on our main power grid. But we were able to have about 1,200 megawatts that we felt could help seed additional AI data centers. But in telling them that, it meant that if you want more, you're going to have to build it yourself. And so I think that this result today is a culmination of that policy, is that there's a recognition that if you want to grow, building your own power, if you build extra and can sell some to the grid, that also will help reduce costs to consumers, and it will also help to defray some of the costs on the transmission lines. So we've learned from what we've seen in other jurisdictions, and so we're wanting to put this forward as a net positive for the community. We know that depending on gas prices, This project alone will generate between 15 and 35 million a year every year in new royalties, not to mention all of the personal income taxes that are generated from the construction job growth, as well as the ongoing high-skilled jobs that are being employed there. And we hope to be able to see more opportunities for that kind of value proposition.
All right. So that gives you a general sense of what is going on there. There's a couple of other people or companies involved there where we heard Kineticor, I believe, is one of them that was involved. They were there as well. Andrew Plant, the CEO of Kineticor, was there. So yeah. It looks like that's where Alberta is going, and that's kind of the piece of the puzzle we were missing to sort of understand all this previous behavior. And so, why is there such an insistence that any future baseload power from Alberta has to come from oil and gas? Why couldn't it come from any other source? Why the refusal for interties? Why the pushing back on a nuclear coming in to Alberta? Why the concerted effort to kill the renewable sector? It's because Danielle Smith, somewhere along the way, decided that the bigger financial opportunity for the province was going to be in data centers, but the energy issue was the problem. Again, given that Alberta is one of the most expensive places in the country, if not the most expensive place to do business when it comes to electricity. And when you are if you're seeing the writing on the wall that we are going to have a national electrification strategy, and it is going to be passing through Alberta, and again, all of this may be tied in together with this MOU pipeline type thing and implementation agreement that yes, you will participate in the national electricity grid. Yes, you will have interties. Yes, you will open yourself up to nuclear to start funding, start ensuring more of your baseload power. Yes, you will go through the southern route if you want another bitumen pipeline. There could have been more elements to this bargain than just what was pathways and the private proponent. Given that there's a lot of these strategies from the government that seem to be layering over and on top of each other to get all of this happening, right? You've got, and if you include as well the deals with the North that were recently signed to have those three projects in the North, one that will have a deep water port and an airstrip near Grays Bay, the Mackenzie Valley Road that will be constructed, and then of course in Northern Ontario, the nuclear waste repository for storing it to handle the nuclear waste that we currently produce. But of course, if we go ahead with that nuclear strategy, we'll be building 10 more reactors within the course of the next 10 years or so, I think it is. And there will have to be place to put that waste as well. When you add that to the electrification strategy, seeking to double our grid by 2050, that's involved in this too. And then, of course, we have the oil strategy for diversifying our markets and then taking advantage of this once-in-a-generation moment that, the president of the IEA is pointing out to us is available, and pointing out to the world is available in order to secure its have multiple different points, but where it can secure its energy future, therefore themselves exposing themselves much less to a single point of failure, not being so reliant on just the United States or just what's going on through the Strait of Hormuz, having a couple of extra backups and some built-in redundancy even to ensure that they have a constant supply. Because particularly with Europe, right, they've had things disrupted with the Russian invasion of all of Ukraine, when they had to make a lot of changes very quickly. And now they've had the disruption with the Strait of Hormuz, and they also have the USA going rogue repeatedly. So they might be wanting to turn around and say, okay, is there any place else in the world where we can look at to ensure that we can have a stable supply in case these types of disruptions, which seem to be happening more often, coming from wider and different sources. Is there any place that's really, really stable? That would be us. So the game may have changed with recent events, and like we said, creating that opportunity for the federal government to seize upon. And it seems like the Prime Minister is has decided that this is an opportunity we should seize upon, come hell or high water, to the point, right, of making this type of agreement with the government of Alberta, where he is going to have to go on and explain to Canadians why it is that we are indeed, even though we were promised that that would not happen, why we are indeed buying another pipeline. And of course, as I mentioned before, leaving Danielle Smith in the position of trying to explain why it is that the TMX pipeline that Trudeau bought was a terrible, terrible thing, because we used our taxpayer dollars in order to be able to fund it, and why using our taxpayer dollars to fund this new pipeline is not a terrible, awful thing. And of course, having to fight the separatists who don't want it. So, yeah, it's a little. I'm not showing you much or any actually things from the press announcement between Mark Carney and Danielle Smith, partly because there was no particularly salient quotable moment, but the audio of the event also wasn't all that great. It sounds a little bit like it was coming from inside a tin can. So probably not the best tool here to advocate. Hopefully there'll be something with some audio that's cleaned up later on that might have something. Let's see what else we have here, since we have a few minutes left. Where are we? Well, yeah, I guess we can touch upon this one very briefly. As you noticed, you may have known, the Conservative Party shuffled its critics bench. They like to call it the shadow cabinet, but in Canada, our tradition is to refer to them as critics because that put more emphasis on the personal responsibility for the people who were making the claims, and not, also not to sort of, create the impression when we use a shadow, given that it was not our tradition, and people start to use it now in a modern context, tries to create the impression that the government of the day is inherently corrupt and unethical and needs somebody to shadow them and then look at everything possible. It's just a little more adversarial term than a critic. But in the Westminster system, they can be used interchangeably. It's just more of a regionalism on how our system developed over time over here. But Pierre Poilievre announced some changes prior to an expected shuffle that would happen within the federal government's bench, but has not yet been announced. So this one seems a little early and premature. But according to Kate McKenna of CBC, it says that Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is shuffling his front bench in a renewal that sees a number of recently elected MPs taking on bigger portfolios, while also promoting one of the party's longest-serving MPs to finance critic. Wellington Halton Hills North MP Michael Chong will take over as the finance critic, leaving his longtime foreign affairs critic role. Chong assumed office 22 years ago in 2004. The new foreign affairs critic is Ontario MP Eric Duncan, who used to be co-leader of the party. I do not know if he's lost that title, along with Melissa Lantsman. I was delighted with the challenge, so I'm looking forward to taking on this new role, said Chong in an interview with CBC News. I think the trajectory of the current government is no different than the previous Liberal government, and that's why Canadians continue to struggle with affordability. Conservatives are putting affordability front and center and branding on the shuffle, with Polyev saying in a video accompanying the announcement that their priorities are affordability, affordability, and affordability, and opposing absolutely any proposal that could come along that could make things more affordable. Chong said in his new role, he'll be pushing the government on the country's sluggish growth, capital investment decline, and Canada's weak productivity. Quote, Canadians struggle to pay their everyday cost of living because of all of this, he said. He replaces Mr. Singh. Oh, God. Why do I always never remember his name? Singhalan, I think it is. Jasraj Singhalan in that position. So who gets demoted essentially to the critic for revenue. A number of recently elected MPs have new jobs as well. North Island Powell River MP Aaron Gunn is the new ethics critic. Newmarket Aurora MP Sandra Kubina is the new Treasury Board critic. And Long Ridge Mountains MP Carol Ansey is leading the Energy and Natural Resources file. Nanaimo Ladysmith MP Tamara Cronus is the new critic for supply chain issues and chairs the Food Affordability Task Force. Aaron Gunn, Sandra Kubina, Carol Ansey, all if you have paid attention to their comments, mini PP versions. So basically clones of Pierre Poilievre who tend to do politics in the same way that he does. Michael Chong does that a little less, but has dipped into the Kool-Aid more than enough times to have people who used to think of him as being one of the good ones question him now. However, no member of the party's senior leadership are changing. MP Melissa Landsman and Tim Uppal remain deputy leaders. Okay, so I made a mistake. Aaron Duncan was not a deputy leader then. Andrew Scheer continues as House Leader, thus for continuing, ensuring that Andrew Coyne will be able to keep on saying that the biggest mistake PR does every day is send Andrew Scheer out to talk about things. And Chris Workington keeps his job of Chief Opposition Whip, even after putting out a tweet suggesting very strongly that Mark Carney is an Epstein accomplice. Apparently that wasn't enough to get Pierre to determine he did not have the emotional fortitude for the position he holds. In total, 83 MPs are tasked with a role in the shadow cabinet, representing more than half of the caucus's 140 members. The positions are not paid, but show trust from the party's leadership and can result in more visibility in question period and in media appearances where they repeat the question that has been given to them from central brain. So yes, opportunities maybe to get visibility, but not really to shine or show any personality or initiative. Effective critics can also play crucial roles in holding the government to account. During his time as finance critic, Poilievre successfully pushed for the resignation of Liberal Minister Bill Morneau over the revelation that he had to repay $41,366 in travel expenses covered for him by We Charity. The most notable omission is MP Larry Brock, a former prosecutor who oversaw the Conservative Tough on Crime agenda as Shadow Minister for Justice and the Attorney General of Canada. In a statement posted online, he said he made the decision to step back for personal reasons. I continue to put my full support behind Pierre Poilievre. He is the leader of Canada. He is the leader Canada needs and will make an amazing prime minister, read the statement. Leslyn Lewis also got demoted from the file that she had to being the critic for AI. As I noted in my social media tweets, I'm sure that there's a joke to be had there with the association of Dr. Leslie Lewis and artificial intelligence, but I have a feeling that it might be too easy, and therefore I will not go there. Because I'm petty, but I'm not cruel. I'm sure there were more changes than that, of course. Let's see if there's anything else in the other articles that might give us a bit of a longer list. Nope, indeed. But let's see. Oh, yes. Alberta MP Shiv Majumdar is now the party's critic for Canada-U.S. relations, an important file as the country is prepared to enter the formal review period for the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Agreement on Trade, better known as CUSMA. Ontario MP Shelby Cramp-Newman, who held that role when the title was critic for Canada-U.S. Trade, will now be special advisor for Ontario. So she got demoted. A notable absence from Poilievre's critic team is Ontario MP Jamil Javani, again, who has made trips to the U.S. himself to meet with President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance, his friend from law school, and who has been embarrassing himself incredibly on issues related to the rainbow community. Mark Garrettson put out a great clapback that hopefully we'll be able to show you at another moment. MP Aaron Gunn is taking over the Ethics and Government Accountability critic role from Ontario Michael Barrett, who moves to Veterans Affairs, so he too gets demoted. And yes, Michael Chong, the new finance critic, replacing MP Jasraj Halan, who moves to the National Revenue File, which is also a demotion. So a lot of the people that he ran in the last election stating would be the team that is needed are people that he is now definitely pushed out. The full list of all of the whole 84 of them, because again, everybody, the party that objects to participation trophies and allegedly believes in merit, thought that giving everybody a participation trophy was a good idea. So I put it there. We have Kit Bucky here saying Majumdar is an ideological extremist. What he is going to bring to the U.S.-Canada relations portfolio other than billionaire apologist whining, probably not much. Leslie Lewis was a real flop. AI is a good place to sideline her too, indeed. Keeping Scheer as the spokes reveals how shallow the talent pool actually is. And Chong is thoughtful, but finance is not a portfolio that allows much creative thinking, indeed. And Bucky says, I hate the Britishism shadow cabinet. It seems out of character for the PP cons to break Canadian tradition. Indeed. But that's the whole point, right, is to destroy all the institutions by treating them differently and having different relations towards them. The conservative mantra or new way of doing it relies pretty much on painting absolutely everybody as corrupt and unethical and, being meritorious of contempt. So by using the term shadow cabinet, if it had come with us from the tradition all those years ago, we would have a different relation to the word. But them trying to introduce it now obviously has some type of ominous vibe to it. So there you go. Kit Saucy just said that Nova Scotia just approved a turbine project. So let me see here. This is Michael McDonald from the Canadian Press, since we're talking about energy. The Nova Scotia government has granted environmental assessment approval for plans to build what it describes as the province's largest wind energy project. On Thursday, the Environment Department issued a statement saying the Ocean Lake Wind Project proposed for Guysborough County in eastern Nova Scotia calls for the construction of 158 turbines, each of them 221 meters tall. The proposed sites for the turbines are near the communities of New Harbour, Goldboro, Larry's River, Lundy, and Rochevale. Construction is expected to start in 2029 the government says, with completion slated for 5 years later. As well, the project must comply with 61 terms and conditions aimed at protecting the environment and human health. The project developers are Everwind Nova Scotia Holdings Limited, a Canadian energy infrastructure company, and the Member 2 Development Corporation, the development arm of the Member 2 First Nation in Cape Breton. Meanwhile, Everwind Fuels is developing one of North America's first large-scale green hydrogen and ammonia projects at Point Tupper in Cape Breton, which in its first phase will be powered by 650 megawatts of electricity from 4 previously announced wind farms. The project's first phase is expected to cost $2 billion. Electricity from this initial phase is scheduled to flow in 2028, with the hydrogen and ammonia plant coming online a few years later. This is kind of interesting because it's a new energy project that is going to be electrified from the energy created by previously announced wind farms. So we're actually at a point where we're using clean energy to develop procedures and ways to go forward to develop even more green energy. That is a critical point in the phase of going green, when you're using your green energy to be able to produce yet more energy. The project's first phase is expected to cost $2 billion. Electricity from this initial phase is scheduled to flow in 2028, with the hydrogen and ammonia plant coming online a few years later. The first phase is projected to produce about 200,000 tons of clean ammonia a year. Ammonia is the most common way to ship hydrogen long distances. The Ocean Lake project is expected to power Everwood's second phase, which could add another 800,000 tons of ammonia production per year. Phase 2 calls for generating 2 gigawatts of electricity from up to 3 additional onshore wind projects. Once the Ocean Lake wind project is operational, it will generate about 1,200 megawatts of clean electricity, enough to power the equivalent of 400,000 homes, the government says. The Environment Department says its Ocean Lake's green energy will reduce Nova Scotia's annual greenhouse gas emissions by about 1.94 million tons, or the equivalent of removing 420,000 gas-powered vehicles from the road. Construction of the Ocean Lake project is expected to create more than 400 construction jobs, generating about $11 million in annual tax revenue for the municipality of the District of Guysborough. The Nova Scotia government has committed to phasing out its coal-fired power plants by 2030, while also reducing greenhouse gas emissions from electricity production by more than 90% of 2005 levels. Canada and the European Union are working together to bring Canadian hydrogen to the continent as a way to wean countries like Germany off Russian energy exports. In March, Everwind Fuel CEO Trent Vichy said the company had yet to sign up any customers. Okay, so that is a positive development as well. Thank you for bringing it to our attention, Kit Saucy. All right, kits and cubs, that is the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us, because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do, especially when you include something of your own stating why it is that our content has resonated with you, because you are influencers in your own community, and that encourages people to click on the link here. With regard to the previous story here, we have Kit Linda saying, I was just reading this morning that there are 7 companies bidding for the wind project. That could be interesting. And Kit Saucy saying the big bonus is that Nova Scotia Power will not be getting the contract to have the power. It will be a new company to create competition for Nova Scotia Power. Oh, that's good. Fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. Kids and Cubs, if you would like to support us, one of the ways you can do that is by scanning this QR code, which will bring you to our YouTube page if you're not already there, where you can smash with our buttons like, share, and subscribe, and click our notification bell and select all, so that you know when we have some new offerings for you to watch. And of course, if you happen to be watching the show on a cell or a tablet fewer than 7 days after the live broadcast, if you swipe left on the comment section, you will have the opportunity to grant us some hype points, which allows smaller viewer channels like ourselves to get more exposure. And you can do that 3 times a week. We thank you for that. Remember, if you're watching live, if you smash now, you don't have to remember to do it before you leave. So smash away, have a good time. And another way you can help us, Kids and Cubs, is by a contribution to the Eager Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund. If you like what we do and you find our content is helpful and resonates with you and is informative, maybe even a little entertaining, you might want to help us with the costs that we incur to bring this show to you. Scanning this QR code will bring you to our coffee page, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word, where you will find our Emergency Hydration Fund, where you can buy your favorite beaver a mug of hot chocolate, or your favorite grizzly a cup of dark coffee. Yes, all that good stuff. And if there happens to be a little extra in, well, then we could put that into the show to cover our internet fees and streaming platform fees and all of that kind of good stuff that helps us bring the show to you 5 days a week, along with some special live watch parties and special reports when there is some breaking news. Right? So if you like it and want to support us, please scan that QR code. It will bring you to the Emergency Hydration Fund. You can make a one-time donation or a multiple month donation, recurring donation that ends whenever you would like. You are not locked in at any time. It just gives us a little bit more certainty if you do that, and we would definitely appreciate it. We get about 95 to 97% of your donation when you go through our coffee page. If you're watching on YouTube, we have stickers, super chats, and memberships that you can purchase, and that gets us 70% of your donation. And if you're doing the Buy Canadian thing and not want help, the US CE Tech Bros, a direct transfer to our email account to northeagerbeaver@gmail.com ensures that we get 100% of your donation because it goes from your Canadian institution to ours, and therefore the United States and the CE Tech Bros have nothing to do with it. You get more Beaver Bang for your buck. Now, if you're not able to contribute financially, please do not worry, because the gifts of your attention and participation are the ones that matter the most to us. And you can contribute in other ways, like in Word, by using that same email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, to let us know what you think of the show, good, bad, or ugly. We appreciate constructive critique like we appreciate compliments. So please let us know what you think. Just be gentle and kind. You can offer us some guest suggestions for the True North Eager Beaver interview project. And of course, send us your good news for when we are doom scrolling. And if you have questions about politics or how we put the show together, please ask them. We'd love to answer those types of questions. If you are looking for us at our socials, at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge and on the Shitter, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook. We have the Damn Fam Discord. We have our Beaver Bite Substack. We have the True North Eager Beaver Instagram run by Kit Uncover, who produces our clips. We also have our coffee page. We have and our comment section right down here if you're watching on YouTube. We do try to read everything that you send us, even though we're not able to answer everyone, and everything that you contribute, either in financial or in word, does go back into the show to make it better. So we thank you so much for everything that you do to support us. It really does mean the world to us. Thank you. Because democracy is something that you do, I'm going to have the same advice that I offered. Take a couple of days off and make it a Canada Day long weekend. Do make sure to be in front of your television tomorrow, waving that maple leaf loud and proud and cheering on for Team Canada. And hopefully we can make a little magic happen if we wish it hard enough. You never know. You never know. We can get back to work on Monday for democracy. Right now, there's a little bit of patriotism still to take care of. It could be a tough world. Words of wisdom. Words of wisdom. Listen, there's been a lot going on over the past few days. I'm hoping that this is comes to the end of some major announcements, because over the last little while we've had, national food security. We've had national electrification. We've had a national nuclear strategy. We have this comprehensive deals with Quebec and with the province of British Columbia. We have the pipeline thing. We have the critical infrastructure announcement also with British Columbia from a while ago, along with everything that happened at the G7 and everything that's going on with Kuzma. There's a lot going on there, but there has been a lot of huge policy announcements made over the past little while. It's almost like the federal government is trying to flood the zone with actual real policy and trying to give conservatives lots of stuff to react to. And it seems right now that it's the conservatives that appear to be overwhelmed, that don't know how to react to so much serious policy, that all they can do is just immediately poo-poo on something as soon as it comes out reflexively, but not tell us how or why. Right. The main conservative objection to this whole pipeline agreement with Alberta seems to be the fact that we are not going through the northern coast. And once again, Doesn't he understand geography, that it's much cheaper and it's much faster to send it through the north? Yes, but you know what's faster than, you know what's not faster than sending it through the south? Not being able to send it through the north at all, because nobody will approve it, and the project will be constantly protested and in court, and perhaps never built. That's the counterfactual that Pierre never presents to you, because he likes to oversimplify and over reduce. But that's basically the main criticism that they have, is that it wasn't going out the north, so it's going to take a couple of extra days. And apparently, the Conservatives are perfectly willing to sacrifice the good for the sake of the perfect. So maybe that's the advice. Don't sacrifice something that is good if you claim you want something for the sake of the fact that it's not perfect. Sometimes you just need to take the money and run. You take the win, keep your mouth shut, and you say, here, this is what we wanted all along. Anyway, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. He's got a bright new critics cabinet now. So maybe they will be better than the ones that were there before. But again, given that it seems that he promoted a lot of mini PPs up, people that seem to share the same worldview, I have a feeling that that's probably not going to happen. And this is not going to make things better for him. But hey, that's why we play the game, right? Let's see how it pans out. Kids and cubs, it can be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now at the count of 3, may I please have, and Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, and 3. Let me hear you. Oh, yeah, that is the good stuff right there. And you asked so kindly and nicely. So as your queen, how can I resist? I must serve. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kids and cubs, a little bit of news of Canadians who make us proud. Wimbledon is going on, and in singles, unfortunately, we are already down to just one player, Felix Auger-Aliassime, who has advanced to the third round. He is actually ranked third in this tournament, but he is in a Djokovic's quarter of the draw, so and then in Sinner's half of the draw. So it might be a difficult run for him when he gets to the later stages, but he's got his third round match scheduled today for about noon Eastern, which he would be predicted to win given the rankings. In doubles, Gabriela Dabrowski won her first round match with her partner Luisa Stefani, and she's coming off a victory at the Eastbourne tournament on grass and in the UK right before. So winning a title there. Going into the Wimbledon draw, which is always some good news. We have Leila Annie Fernandez also registered in the women's doubles draw, as well as the mixed doubles draw this year. So it will be interesting to see how she does there. Gabriela Dabrowska also has a mixed doubles match. She's partnered up with Evan King again, with whom she made the finals at the French Open, and will be looking to take that into another successful run. And she plays with him later today. An up-and-coming tennis player from Canada, Mr. Rosen, his last name is, first name Sasha, made it to the finals of a 15 level event in Claremont on hard court. So a good first year result for this young player. You might want to keep him in your thoughts because when somebody does that fairly well early enough on, it usually means that there's a good opportunity that they could eventually become a rising star on the tennis scene. So keep your ears out for Sasha Rosen from Canada, who might be making some waves soon enough, or more waves than he already has. I'm sure that is going to help his making a final is going to help his ranking quite considerably here. We also had some good results from our golfers of late, Kits and Cubs. Last weekend, we had several golfers come up with some pretty big time performances at various tournaments. And we even, in fact, had a tournament winner along the way, Mr. Nesbitt, his last name is, and hopefully I can get his first name for you, who did very well. I believe it is at a Corn Ferry Tour event. Just looking for his name here to make sure I can find it. All right, there we go. The Memorial Health Championships in the United States finished his 4 rounds 26 under par and finishing in first place. Drew Nesbitt, his world ranking is 194. That will certainly help him a good amount. Over the course of last week as well, there were various other Canadian players who did very well. One of them being Corey Connors, who finished 7th at the Travelers Championship PGA Tour. So a good top 10 finished there. Nick Taylor finished 25th in that one as well, which is a good result, a good top 30 result. And then a PGA event is a pretty much very successful. And then we had Brooke Anderson, who was at the LPGA Tour KPMG Women's PGA Championship, and who finished third with a -10 for the event, 3 shots off the pace, but finished tied for third. And that was a fantastic result for her as well. And then I believe on the seniors, the Champions Tour, which is I think the seniors tour at the Dix Open, we had Canadian legend Stephen Ames taken 18th place over there. Again, top 30, top 20 result is very good. And on the Korean tour at the KPGA Gunsan Open, we had another Canadian who's on that tour, Richard Sunil Young Bell, take a 10th place at that golf tournament. So a lot of success for Canadian golfers over the past little while. In basketball, currently, there's the World Cup qualification first round. Canada will be starting in that. This is qualification for teams from the Americas. Canada went 4-0 in group play. So I'm not sure if they play, because there's only 4 teams. I'm going to guess that maybe they play against each other twice, a home and away series there to finish. But Canada already with its result has secured advancement to the next round to qualify for the World Cup of basketball. But there is also another tournament, the World Championships under 17 playoffs, where Team Canada had done very well in pool play, finishing second in their pool to advance to the playoffs. Got a good win against Italy in the eighths of finals, but lost in the quarterfinals today to Australia, 100-86. So a good performance overall by Team Canada. But that was our under 17 boys here. And in volleyball, if I am not mistaken, there is something going on involving Team Canada either coming up. I could be wrong on that. Maybe I misnoted that. I think I may have done that, yes. I thought that there was something in volleyball, but there is not. I'm just going to go take a look to see if it was last weekend and I'm misremembering it. Nope. Oh, yes. Yes, I was. There was the Pan American Cup under 21 in volleyball. Team Canada was playing the United States in the final. Unfortunately, lost 3-0, but did take the silver medal at that tournament. And one more thing to mention, we seem to be talking about it more and more these days, but in the sport of badminton, this week is the stop on the Canadian stop on the Badminton World Federation Tour. And for the women, we have Michelle Lee, who is there and has advanced to the quarterfinals in this tournament and is favored to win that match based on rankings. And Victor Lai, of course, who recently became Canada's first medalist at a World Championships, who's now ranked number 9 in the world after winning that big tournament. I think it was his first Masters tournament win. I believe it was in Indonesia a couple of weeks ago. In this tournament, and he is also advanced to the quarterfinals, and he is predicted based on rankings to win that match. There are no Canadians left in the mixed doubles or men's doubles tournament, women's or men's doubles tournament at the Canadian Open in badminton, but still 2 players in singles that could actually come away with those titles. Once the week is over, they're in a very good position to be able to do so. So we will cheer for them. That's all I got for you for the moment, kits and cubs. So have a wonderful weekend. We are going to be having a little more Canada Day celebrations when we go visit our friends tomorrow for the big Canada Day by the lake party. And we will be watching Canada take on Morocco at the World Cup while that happens. Amour et bisous, and we will see you very soon. Bye, everyone.